Want to hear an interesting stat? Prior to Sunday's loss against the Tennessee Titans, the Seattle Seahawks were 17-1 all-time whenever Chris Carson scored at least one touchdown. Now, despite scoring 2 touchdowns in that debacle against the Titans, the Seahawks lead that game now 17-2 all-time whenever Chris Carson scores at least one touchdown. Before we get into it, I got one surprise for y'all, so stick around to the end of the video to find out what that is. Now let's take a closer look at why the Seahawks lost to the Tennessee Titans and what they could take away from that loss.
Here comes the, y'all don't really want it like that. Yeah. Here comes the.
The first thing that Seattle can learn from their loss against the Tennessee Titans is that they must utilize all their playmakers and go back to running the football. As we all know, Pete Carroll's old school, old fashioned, and he wants to run the football. Well, how do you explain Chris Carson only having 4 carries in the second half? Altogether, Seattle had 6 rushes in the second half. One of them was a Freddie Swain jet sweep, and another was a Russell Wilson scramble at the end of the fourth quarter. So take those 2 away, and altogether, Seattle only ran the ball 4 times. Chris Carson 4 times, 4 carries. There's 15 minutes in the third quarter, there's 15 minutes in the fourth quarter, and there's 15 minutes in overtime. So you mean to tell me in 45 minutes of football, Chris Carson only gets 4 carries? Well, maybe that explains the loss in and of itself. And going back to utilizing all of Seattle's playmakers, what happened to Gerald Everett? What happened to the use of tight ends? What happened to giving the ball to Alex Collins? What happened to all the jet sweeps and the pre-snap motions? What happened to getting it after the catch? Gerald Everett only had 1 catch for 2 yards, and that didn't come until the fourth quarter. Will Dissly didn't receive a single target, and despite having an explosive carry to close out the second half, which led to a touchdown, Alex Collins didn't have a single carry in the second half. Unlike in week 1, Seattle was able to march down the football field, utilize guys like Gerald Everett, Will Dissly. They gave the ball to the running backs. Well, what happened in the second half of that loss to the Tennessee Titans? Seattle must go back to its bread and butter, and Pete Carroll must realize that there's other playmakers on this football team rather than just Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Let's go back to what they did in week 1. Seattle needs a Ballhawk. Look, Seattle was a very undisciplined football team this past Sunday as they committed 10 penalties for 100 yards. It's hard to win football games when you're committing that many penalties and taking away that many yards from your football team. And having a playmaker on the back end, having a guy that can force turnovers, having a guy that can take advantage of missed opportunities, well, that helps to erase mistakes. AJ Brown of the Tennessee Titans had a very uncharacteristic game. He had 3 drops, and a few of those times the ball was in the air. If we were going back to the Legion of Boom, well, all those guys were very opportunistic, all those guys forced turnovers, and all those guys helped to erase mistakes from the other aspects of the team. Now, I'm not saying Seattle needs an elite cover guy. They don't need an elite corner on the back end because their pass rush is going to help to mask some of those deficiencies. All I'm saying is that if Quandre Diggs is your team's best ball hawk, then you're not very solid in that department. I know it's early, and I know we're only through week 2, but Seattle is one of 6 teams in the NFL without an INT. They're in the same company as the likes of the Jets, the Jaguars, the Falcons, some of the worst teams in all the NFL, and Seattle has no business being in the same conversation as some of these, to be quite honest, awful teams. One more thing, Brian Monet is a lot more important than Seattle fans might think. Week 1's unsung hero, he was also one of Pro Football Focus's highest graded players of the entire Seattle Seahawks roster. At one point in the game in the third quarter against Jonathan Taylor in that top tier rushing attack, he had 3 straight run stops, and he ended the game with 5 run stops. He's a guy that is great at stuffing the run. He's great at diagnosing the run. He's great at using leverage, and he's a pretty underrated pass rusher from the defensive tackle spot. I can guarantee y'all if Brian Monet had played in the second half, or at least if he had played in that game against the Tennessee Titans, Derrick Henry would not have rumbled for 147 yards and 3 touchdowns in the second half alone. More times than not, Seattle is still too much of a boom or bust offense. On the day, Seattle had 4 touchdowns, right? 2 of those touchdowns were 60+ yard bombs to Tyler Lockett and Freddie Swain. So they definitely fit that boom variety. Now for the second 2 touchdowns, or for the next 2 touchdowns, Chris Carson had a 4-yard touchdown run before the end of the first half, and that was all thanks to the defense, honestly, and that forced fumble that Alton Robinson had, which set up Seattle very nicely and put him at the Tennessee 6-yard line. So you take away that touchdown, you give it to the defense, Seattle has 1 more touchdown, and it's that last Chris Carson rushing touchdown before the half ended. That was the only play, or that was the only drive of the game in which Seattle did not have and explosive play. They marched down the field, I think it was 7 plays for 75 yards, but far too often, they were very incompetent on third down like they were all of last year. And if the deep play or if the deep balls, if the big plays were not there, then Seattle's offense just completely stalled out. Can we not bring back memories of what happened in the second half of last year? Can we go back to utilizing playmakers? Can Seattle go back to running the football? Well, let's just hope somebody over there is watching this video. Well, that marks the end of this video. Like I said earlier in the beginning, I got a special surprise for y'all. And for those of you guys that play sports bets, well, go on betus.com and use our promo code down below, Steezy206, to receive a 125% sign-up bonus whenever you place your first sports bet today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, share this video, drop us a like, follow us on all socials at Steezy Smith. Nothing but love, all glory to God, and Steezy out. Again, this video is going to be dedicated to Mr. Todd Nas. While that concludes this video, we have loads of other content. You don't have to stop watching there. Other content on our channel homepage, as well as our social media platforms. And again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for us. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Nothing but love, and Steezy out.